Welcome to the Fashion Edit by Blog on Fashion, your ultimate destination for style inspiration, trend insights, and everything you need for a fashion-forward lifestyle.
Hey everyone, and welcome to The Deep Dive. Today we're taking a deep dive into fashion history, exploring the trends and influences that shape style from the 1900s to today.
Sounds fun.
But we're not just looking at clothes. We're going to decode how fashion acts as this language, this visual record of society's values, innovations, even global events.
It's like fashion semiotics, the study of how clothing conveys meaning.
Whoa, fashion semiotics. You're already dropping knowledge bombs, and we haven't even hit the 1920s yet.
Well, we have a lot of ground to cover.
That's for sure. So let's start with the early 20th century, a time of, dramatic change. Can you paint us a picture of what fashion was like back then?
Okay, so imagine elegant ladies in their floor-length gowns. Corsets are cinched tight, every detail meticulously crafted.
Sounds so restrictive.
It was. It was an era of extravagance and structure reflecting a society steeped in tradition and social hierarchy.
Wow. It's amazing how even something like a corset can speak to the social norms of the time. But then things start to shift.
Right.
I mean, hello, the Roaring '20s. It's like someone crank up the volume on everything, music, culture, and of course, fashion.
Absolutely. The 1920s were a period of immense social upheaval, particularly for women. After World War I and gaining the right to vote, women were stepping into new roles and demanding more freedom.
Right.
And their clothing reflected this newfound liberation.
You're talking about the flapper era.
Exactly.
Hemlines shot up, waists dropped. Those beaded dresses were practically bouncing on the dance floor.
Yes. It was a visual rebellion against the restrictive styles of the past.
It must have been quite a shock.
It was. It was a bold statement of independence. The flapper look embodied the energy and optimism of a generation eager to break free from convention.
And it makes me think of Coco Chanel.
Yes.
It's a little black dress, and I've always loved its simple elegance.
Yeah.
But I bet there's a deeper story there.
More than you might think, Chanel's designs challenged the extravagant styles of the past, embracing simplicity and functionality.
Right.
The little black dress, with its clean lines and timeless appeal, became a symbol of modern femininity. Chic, versatile, and accessible to women of all backgrounds.
Wow. It's incredible how a single garment can have such a lasting impact on fashion history.
Yeah.
But as the 1930s rolled in, the world faced some really, really hard times. The Great Depression.
Yeah.
Did fashion reflect those darker times?
It did, but in a fascinating way. While the economic downturn brought about a need for practicality, Hollywood stepped in to offer a glimmer of hope and escapism.
Oh, interesting.
Those glamorous satin gowns and bold shoulders we see in films like Gone with the Wind provided a sense of fantasy and aspiration during a difficult period.
So even in times of hardship, fashion could offer a sense of beauty and escape. Was it truly hope or distraction? It's interesting to consider both sides, I think.
Yeah, right. And then, of course, World War II brought about a complete shift in priorities. Suddenly, practicality became paramount. Fabric rationing meant making the most of every inch of material.
I can imagine.
Leading to the rise of A-line skirts, tailored jackets, and utility wear.
So utilitarian.
Yeah, fashion took on a more functional role, reflecting the wartime spirit of resourcefulness and resilience.
You know, it makes you realize that fashion isn't just about aesthetics. It's deeply intertwined with, the social and political climate of the time. But even in the midst of war, the desire for beauty didn't disappear.
Right. It might have even intensified.
Yeah.
Which brings us to a pivotal moment in fashion history, 1947, and the arrival of Christian Dior's new look.
Okay, I've heard of the new look, but I'm not exactly sure what it entailed. Was it just a trend or something more significant?
Much more than just a trend. Dior's designs with their cinched waists, full skirts, and luxurious fabrics were a deliberate departure from the wartime austerity.
Wow.
They represented a return to femininity, elegance, and indulgence.
Oh, interesting.
A reclaiming of beauty after years of sacrifice.
Wow, I never thought of it that way. It's like the new look was a symbol of hope and renewal. A way of saying we've survived the war and now it's time to celebrate life and beauty again.
Precisely. It was a powerful statement that resonated with women around the world, ushering in a new era of fashion and marking a turning point in the 20th century.
It's incredible how fashion can capture the spirit of an era so perfectly. And speaking of capturing a spirit, the 1950s brought us back to that feeling of opulence. Think Marilyn Monroe in those iconic fitted dresses and gloves. It was all about glamour, wasn't it?
It was a return to a more glamorous and feminine aesthetic, but with a distinctly modern twist. The post-war economic boom led to a renewed focus on consumerism and a celebration of the ideal feminine form.
Right.
Think full skirts, cinched waists, and a polished, put-together look.
So it was like a blend of classic elegance and modern sensibility. It sounds like the 1950s were all about embracing this newfound prosperity and enjoying life. But then the 1960s arrived, and things took a dramatic turn.
Right. Oh, absolutely. Get ready for a cultural earthquake, the youthquake, to be precise.
Okay, I'm all ears. Tell me more about this youthquake.
The 1960s were a time of immense social and cultural change driven by a burgeoning youth culture that was questioning everything from traditional values to fashion norms.
Right.
And at the heart of this revolution was the miniskirt.
Ah, the miniskirt. It's such an iconic symbol of the 1960s. But why was it so revolutionary? Was it just about fashion, or was there something deeper going on?
It was about so much more than just fashion. The miniskirt was a symbol of youthful rebellion, a rejection of the restrictive norms of the past.
Right.
It represented a new era of sexual liberation and a celebration of female empowerment.
Wow, that's powerful. It makes you realize how even a seemingly simple garment like a skirt can challenge societal norms and become a catalyst for change.
Absolutely. And we can't talk about the 1960s without mentioning two key figures, Twiggy with her androgynous mod look, and Mary Quant, the designer who popularized the miniskirt.
Twiggy, those big eyes and that pixie cut, she was the face of a generation. And Mary Quant, she was the one who dared to make those skirts so short. It's amazing how they both became icons of the 1960s, representing this new era of youth culture and fashion experimentation.
Absolutely. They embodied the spirit of the youthquake, challenging traditional beauty standards and pushing the boundaries of what was considered acceptable in fashion.
It's like fashion became a way for young people to express their individuality and break free from the constraints of the past. A trend that continues to inspire designers and fashion lovers even today.
And you can really see the impact of those 1960s changes as we move into the 1970s.
Ah, the 1970s bell-bottoms, bohemian prints, disco glam. Seems like anything went. What were some of the defining features of 1970s fashion?
The 1970s were all about individuality and self-expression. It was a decade that embraced a wide range of styles, from the free-flowing silhouettes of the bohemian movement to the flamboyant energy of the disco era.
Right? It's like fashion became a melting pot of influences reflecting the cultural diversity and social changes of the time. Were there any particular trends or designers that stood out during this period?
Well, think about the rise of bell-bottoms, platform shoes, and psychedelic prints. It was a time when fashion became more casual and comfortable, reflecting a growing desire for personal freedom and a rejection of formality.
Yeah, it sounds like the 1970s were a time of fashion experimentation and a celebration of individuality. It makes me want to dig out my mom's old photos and see what kind of outfits she was rocking back then. But how did things change as we moved into the 1980s? Did fashion follow a similar path, or did it take a completely different direction?
The 1980s were a fascinating contrast to the free-spirited 1970s. While the 70s celebrated individual expression, the 80s saw a shift towards a more structured and powerful aesthetic.
Ah, the 1980s. When I think of that era, I picture shoulder pads, neon colors, and power suits galore. It was all about making a statement.
Exactly. The 1980s were a time of economic boom and a surge in women entering the corporate world. Fashion reflected this newfound ambition and power.
I see.
Think strong silhouettes, bold colors, and an unapologetic embrace of excess.
It's like fashion became a tool for women to command attention and assert their presence in a male-dominated workplace. Those power suits were like a uniform for success. But it wasn't all about corporate chic, right?
Yeah.
I remember something about the birth of streetwear in the 1980s, influenced by hip-hop culture.
That's right. Alongside those power suits, a completely different fashion movement was emerging on the streets. Streetwear, with its roots in hip-hop, skateboarding, and urban youth culture, was all about individuality, authenticity, and challenging the status quo.
It's amazing how fashion can come from such diverse sources, from high-fashion runways to the streets. And who knew that those early streetwear styles would go on to dominate the fashion world for decades to come? Just goes to show how fashion is constantly evolving and being shaped by different cultural influences.
Absolutely. And as we move into the 1990s, we see another dramatic shift in style.
The 1990s were a bit of a whirlwind, weren't they? We had the grunge movement with its ripped jeans and flannel shirts, and then this resurgence of luxury brands and logos. It was a decade of contrasts.
You're right. The 1990s were a fascinating blend of rebellion and revival. On one hand, you had the grunge movement, which rejected materialism and embraced a more authentic DIY aesthetic. Think ripped jeans, oversized flannels, and Doc Martens.
Yeah, it was like fashion was making a statement against the excess of the 1980s, opting for a more casual and anti-establishment look. What about the resurgence of luxury brands and logos? What was driving that trend?
Well, alongside that grunge aesthetic, the 1990s also saw a renewed interest in luxury brands and logos, particularly among younger generations. This logomania trend was partly fueled by the economic boom of the time and a desire for status symbols.
It's interesting how economic trends can influence fashion choices. Was this a rejection of the grunge aesthetic, or were these trends kind of coexisting? Seems like the 1990s really embraced this diverse range of styles.
They definitely did. It was a decade that saw a blurring of lines between high fashion and streetwear, with designers drawing inspiration from both worlds. And this eclectic mix of styles would continue to evolve as we entered a new millennium.
It feels like we're on the cusp of a whole new era of fashion.
Hmm.
So much has changed in the past century, from corsets to miniskirts to power suits and beyond. It makes you wonder, where does fashion go from here? What trends will define the 21st century?
That's a great question, and one we'll delve into deeper as we continue our deep dive.
Stay tuned, fashion fans. We'll be back soon to explore the latest trends and innovations shaping the fashion world today. Welcome back to our deep dive into fashion history. So far, we've journeyed through a century of trends, from the roaring 20s to the grunge era. And it's become clear that fashion is more than just clothes. It's a reflection of our world.
Precisely. And as we move deeper into the 21st century, that connection between fashion and society becomes even more pronounced.
I'm ready to dive into the 2010s. What were some of the key influences shaping fashion during this period?
Well, you can't talk about the 2010s without acknowledging the massive influence of social media.
Oh, absolutely. It's like social media blew open the doors of the fashion world. Suddenly, everyone had a platform to share their style and become a trendsetter.
Exactly. And it wasn't just about celebrities anymore. Bloggers, influencers, everyday people, they were all shaping the fashion landscape.
Yeah.
What people were wearing on Instagram and Pinterest was just as influential as what was on the runway.
Because like fashion became more democratic, more accessible. Did that lead to a faster pace of trends? I mean, with everyone sharing their outfits online, it feels like trends were cycling through at lightning speed.
You're right on the mark. The speed of fashion accelerated dramatically in the 2010s. What was once a seasonal shift became a constant stream of new styles. The rise of fast fashion played a role in that too.
Fast fashion, affordable trends that come and go in the blink of an eye. Do you think that made trends less meaningful? Or was it just a reflection of our fast-paced, digitally driven world?
It's a great question. It definitely changed the way we consume fashion. But amidst all the fast-changing trends, there was another significant development in the 2010s, a blurring of lines between high fashion and streetwear.
Yes, luxury brands collaborating with streetwear designers, sneakers becoming collector's items. It was a whole new level of style fusion.
It really was, and I think it speaks to a shift in values.
Yeah.
Comfort, individuality, and self-expression took center stage.
Think athleisure yoga pants and hoodies became acceptable attire almost anywhere.
It's a far cry from the formal dress codes of the past, wouldn't you say? Fashion became more casual and more reflective of our comfort-driven lifestyles.
Definitely. And it wasn't just about comfort. The 2010s also saw a long overdue push for inclusivity in fashion.
Absolutely. We started seeing a wider range of body types, ethnicities, and gender expressions represented on runways and in campaigns.
It was a shift towards a more representative and accepting fashion industry. One that acknowledged that style is for everyone regardless of size, shape, or background.
Precisely. And that focus on inclusivity and representation has continued to grow as we've entered the 2020s.
Along with a heightened awareness of sustainability, right? Consumers are demanding transparency and ethical practices from fashion brands.
You got it. It's no longer just about looking good. It's about feeling good about what you wear and knowing that it was produced responsibly.
So we're seeing a rise in vintage and secondhand clothing, like a rejection of fast fashion and an embrace of unique, sustainable style.
Exactly. It's like fashion is coming full circle, looking back to the past for inspiration while looking ahead to a more conscious future.
That's a great point. So here we are in 2024. What's the fashion landscape looking like these days?
Well, it's more dynamic and diverse than ever before.
Hmm.
Trends are fleeting, styles are blending, and the lines between high fashion and streetwear are blurring. It's exciting, it's challenging, and it reflects the complex world we live in.
It sounds like the 2020s are all about embracing individuality and making conscious choices.
I think that's a great way to sum it up. But if history has taught us anything, it's that predicting the future of fashion is nearly impossible.
Because just when you think you've seen it all, something new and unexpected emerges.
Exactly. But I think it's safe to say that fashion will continue to evolve to reflect our values, our innovations, and the ever-changing world around us.
And that's what makes this journey through fashion history so fascinating. It's not just about the clothes. It's about understanding who we are and where we're headed as a society.
You said it. And that's a powerful insight to carry with us as we navigate the ever-evolving world of style.
Speaking of evolving, we're about to step into the future of fashion where technology is changing the game in some truly mind-blowing ways.
Get ready for a wild ride.
We'll be back soon for part 3, where we'll explore the fascinating interplay between fashion and technology. Until then, keep those stylish minds engaged and those wardrobes evolving. Welcome back to The Deep Dive. We've been exploring the fascinating world of fashion through the decades.
And in this final part of our journey, we're stepping into the future where fashion and technology collide in some truly innovative ways.
You know, it's so interesting because we've talked about how fashion reflects society, but now we're seeing how it can actually shape the future.
That's right. Fashion isn't just a passive reflection. It's becoming an active force in shaping our world. And one of the most significant developments in recent years is the rise of wearable technology.
Okay, but real talk for a second. When I hear wearable tech, I still picture like those early fitness trackers.
Mm.
Kind of clunky, not exactly stylish. Have things really changed that much?
Oh, you'd be surprised. Wearable technology has come a long way. We're talking smartwatches that double as fashion statements. Fitness trackers so sleek, they blend seamlessly into your outfit. And even clothing embedded with sensors that can monitor your health and vital signs. It's like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it's happening right now.
Whoa, that's pretty mind-blowing. So it's not just about practicality anymore. Fashion and function are really starting to merge.
Exactly. And designers are getting really creative with it. They're using wearable tech to create interactive garments, light-up accessories, and even clothing that can change color or pattern on demand. It's like fashion is becoming this canvas for technological innovation, pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
It's amazing. I'm starting to see how tech can push fashion in some really exciting new directions. But what about the shopping experience? Has technology changed how we consume fashion?
Absolutely. Online shopping has become the norm, but it's evolving rapidly. We're seeing virtual try-on technology so you can see how clothes would look on you without stepping into a fitting room. Personalized style recommendations based on your preferences and body type, and even the rise of virtual fashion shows and digital clothing.
Wait, digital clothing, what does that even mean?
It's a whole new world. Imagine creating a personalized avatar in the metaverse with this whole wardrobe of digital outfits that you can just change at will. It's a way to express yourself and experiment with style without the limitations of physical garments.
Okay, now you're really blowing my mind. So the metaverse, a virtual world where people can interact and express themselves through fashion. It's like something out of Ready Player One.
It's still early days, but the metaverse has the potential to completely transform the fashion industry, from how we design and create clothing to how we consume and experience it.
Yeah, I can see how it would open up all these new possibilities for designers and consumers. But does this mean physical clothing is going out of style? Will we all be walking around in digital outfits soon?
I don't think so. I see it more as an expansion of the fashion landscape. Physical clothing will always have its place. But digital fashion offers this new way to express ourselves, to experiment and push boundaries. And it also raises some important questions about sustainability and inclusivity.
That's a great point. How does digital fashion impact those aspects of the industry?
Well, for one thing, digital fashion eliminates the need for physical production and shipping, which reduces the environmental impact. And it also makes fashion more accessible to people with disabilities or those who can't afford high-end clothing.
So it could potentially make fashion more sustainable and inclusive. That's exciting.
It really is. And this convergence of fashion and technology is just beginning. We're only scratching the surface of what's possible.
It's mind-boggling to think about where fashion might go next. From those elegant gowns of the 1900s to the tech-infused garments of today and tomorrow. It's been an incredible journey.
And I think the biggest takeaway is that fashion is more than just clothes. It's a reflection of our history, our culture, and our ever-evolving relationship with the world around us.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into fashion through the decades, I'm left with this sense of awe and excitement. What do you think the future holds for the world of style?
It's impossible to say, for sure. But I believe fashion will continue to surprise, delight, and challenge us in ways we can't even imagine yet.
I'm ready for the ride.
Yeah.
And who knows, maybe one of our listeners will be the one to create the next groundbreaking trend, the next technological innovation, the next chapter in the ever-evolving story of fashion.
That's the beauty of it. Fashion is a constantly evolving conversation, and we all have the power to contribute our unique voices.
Thanks for joining us on the deep dive. Keep those closets open, those minds curious, and those style senses engaged, because the world of fashion is just getting started.